So hello and good morning, everyone. As I was just introduced, my name is Nandini Kekre and I belong to Sailpoint Technologies and I head their HR for India location. And I'm really honored to be speaking here in this forum at this platform. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Now, today as we have gathered, I was just listening to the sessions downstairs. It's about identity and access management. And I guess all of you have been already working in this domain or are already familiar with this domain. And you know that Sailpoint is a strong player in this domain of identity and access management. And fortunately, I have been associated with Sailpoint for the last 13 years. I've been looking after their HR aspects. And right now, Sailpoint has great plans to grow in India. And really glad and looking forward to that journey of ours. Oops, I think something went wrong. Anyways, I'll continue. Now, today I would like to talk about a topic which is very dear to my heart, and that is about effective feedback, right? Now, I feel giving and receiving feedback is inherent to our coexistence, right? And why do I say that? So be it in any role that we are in, even in our professional lives, as well as our personal lives, we get feedbacks from our friends, we get feedbacks from our parents, right? We get feedback from our colleagues and definitely from our managers all the time. And yes, I think, I don't know how many of you have experienced it, but we definitely get feedback from our spouses as well. And I'm keeping it spouses, gender neutral. So each one of us is free to categorize them into wives and husbands and comments coming from there. So now coming back to the point, feedback. So today I'll be talking about it in the corporate context, right? On the professional context. And I can assure you that some of the points that I'll be talking today, you can also emulate into your personal lives when you're getting feedbacks or you're giving feedbacks to anybody in your personal relations or your professional relations. Okay? So, why do we care about feedback? Now, data supports that those who get feedback, those who receive feedback, they are 3 to 4 times more engaged and more likely to improve on their performances, and that kind of motivates them to perform better. And eventually, as an organization, as a team, we are able to deliver more, right? So how do we do it meaningfully? So feedback, the first point is feedback has to be meaningful. So any idea about what is so hard about giving or receiving feedback? Anything that you would like to say here?
When I want to say that maybe a PIP case, when I'm being a person on a PIP case, so convincing him that the work is not as per expectations is a challenging task.
Right. Now, let's just pause for a second and think about feedback, like what's changed in the current scenario, what's different, and what is challenging, right? So doing it remotely is one major thing that we have been experienced right now. And a survey that says that 84% of people say that they are receiving less and less feedback. Now, another thing is people are giving it less. They are not taking it well. They are not receiving it well. And also the managers are not giving it well enough, right? And the challenges of doing it remotely, or even right now we have hybrid. I think Mini Orange is working all 5 days from office. There's no remote concept, or is it there, right? So anyways, many of the organizations are either hybrid or remote also partially, or some of them are completely in office like how we used to be pre-COVID times. But then even then, the concept of feedback has become very challenging. And as I just asked, so what makes performance feedback hard? Let's look at some of the, the points that were taken down in one of the surveys. What makes feedback conversations hard? So sometimes you see subjectivity in your opinions. So the manager, while giving feedback, is biased at times. They are not very clear. They are not talking objectively, right? There are the employees who take the feedback. When they are given the feedback, they take it personally. Oh, इसने मुझे ऐसे कैसे बोल दिया? How is it that, someone said this to me? Then and sometimes when the manager is giving a very genuine feedback, even then the direct reports respond negatively to feedback, right? It's the same on, managers also focus on only giving negative feedback. We see that more often for remote employees specifically. And then the employees, feel very disengaged when they are given such feedbacks about, okay, this is not going well, or this is not being done well. Okay. Another could be lack of honesty and transparency. The manager is just passing generic statements. You are not proactive enough. You are not doing this well. You are very careless, right? Simple generic statements, but then they do not have any facts associated to it at times. Then there are no opportunities to discuss next steps, right? Okay, I have done wrong, but what next? How do I improve? The manager doesn't at times talk about these next steps. Or employees often disagree about the feedback also. So, you are very careless. No, I'm not, right? Have there been any discussions with your managers when you come out of the room saying that pata nahi kya bol raha tha ya bol rahi thi, and that's not true. I never did that. That is all that he or she sees. They don't see my, positive things and all. And a lot of times, managers do it as a checkbox or a tick box. Just for the sake of doing jaldi, time nahi hai, kuch to likh do, kuch to bol do, kaam khatam, the performance evaluation is done. So, the new work environment where we are seeing more complex organization, as I said, we have a hybrid setup where people are working remote. Some people are working from office. Then there are some people who are working partially from office and partially from in that situation, it becomes complex. Sometimes your work is visible, sometimes it's not visible. And whether you are, the employees can also be taking advantage of it, undue advantage. You just plug into your intra chat or something, and then you show that you're online, but you're not really working, right? Then there are more matrixed organization structures, which means that you are working here, but your manager is somewhere abroad, right? You are reporting to a manager in US or some other location. Then there also increased access to information. You know what's happening in other organizations, you know what's happening in other teams, you know what's happening with the other person in your team. उनको क्या feedback मिला है, उनको क्या बोला जा रहा है, वहाँ पे ऐसा होता है, मुझे ऐसा बोला, things like that. Then the performance expectations are also increasing day by day. You would all agree? And the work and roles are also evolving. Now we just saw AI, things like ChatGPT. Now these kind of scenarios are making our work very different. And our roles are also evolving over a period of time. So in these situations, the giving of feedback, giving of meaningful and effective feedback has become very challenging. Now, what should be the right approach to feedback? Now, when we talk about feedback, the goal should be giving feedback consistently and not seasonally. It should not be an end of the year activity that, okay, साल में एक बार जाके बोल दो, ये गलत किया, वो गलत किया, ऐसे किया, वैसे किया. No, that's not the right thing. The right thing would be to give it consistently. Have it engraved in your one-on-ones on a very regular basis. So that, and give the feedback then and there. So if you see someone doing something, one of your team members doing something which is not up to the mark, which is not up to the expectations, point it out. May not be in a very wider forum, but point it out at that point itself that, hey, this was what was needed. And I think this was what you should have done, or this something like this would have been a better option to do at that point of time. So giving feedback is, it's an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity to talk about continuous improvements in your work, and making sure that there is real encouragement when you're giving that feedback, real encouragement to improve. So be consistent and be constructive. Tell them how your performance can be improved, how you can do better. So that is a constructive feedback. The second point would be, by providing consistent feedback, you are building a trust and establishing a rapport with your team member. So when a manager is giving a very constructive feedback, or when you as a team member is receiving constructive feedback from your manager, you genuinely feel that yes, my manager is invested in me. My manager is genuinely interested in making me grow better, making me improve in points where I lack. And that is how the trust factor builds between the manager and the team member. Then the third point is allow for empty space during delivery. So now this is more for the managers, whenever a manager is giving a feedback which is on a negative side, or which I would call not negative, I would use the word constructive feedback. So whenever a manager is giving that, allow some time for the team member to absorb, to understand what it means. Give some space for that. Allow some time for them to process that information that you have just shared, right? And with that processing of information, they kind of settle down, okay, what is expected from me? What did I do? Where did I fall short? What did go wrong? What went wrong? And things that would help them to actually process it and understand and be in a listening mode, right? So give that time to process that information, and then make sure that if that conversation is going in a very heated direction, emotions are flowing and there is crying and, or the raising of voices and arguments and all that is happening, end the conversation there. You could say something like, okay, this is not happening in the right way or in the right context. Let's end it here. We will talk some other time, maybe tomorrow, right? So that is like, you come back, definitely, you have to end that on a conclusive note. So come back, and if it is getting too emotional, as I said, end it there, or pause there, take a pause, see whether it is the emotions, flowing of emotions and all can be controlled, and then come back to it at a later stage. And the most important thing is, once the feedback has been given, once a constructive feedback has been given, follow up and ensure that the feedback is being implemented, right? The manager needs to keep track of whatever has been given. And I would say it's a joint responsibility of the team member as well as the manager, that they follow up with what was shared as a feedback. So, okay, you were falling short here. These are the things that you need to do. So follow up with that, maybe on a monthly basis, whatever is the frequency that makes sense for the role or for the kind of feedback that has been given, or whatever is the skills or things that are falling short. Depending on that, you can set up a cadence where you are having regular touch points to see how they are progressing, how the feedback that was given to them is being implemented. And that's a very important part. Otherwise, feedback de diya, khatam ho gaya. No, that's not how it works. The next or the most important part is doing the follow-up of the feedback. Okay, so here is a feedback model actually, which helps in developing a script for how do you conduct those feedback conversations. So how do we create this is so that it is received well, it is given in the right context, and making it brain friendly, right? So what does this mean? The first step is a micro yes, which means that, okay, let's start moving. Okay. Should I point it here? Oops, okay. Yeah. So a micro yes approach, which means that let's talk. I want to give you feedback. You haven't done well. Don't start your conversations like that. Take a first micro yes. Can we discuss on this topic? So take it on a positive note. Do you have some time to talk about so-and-so? Or I have some feedback on something like this. Can I share it with you? So when you say this, the obvious answer is yes, right? That is the most likely. 99% of the time you would hear a yes for these kind of questions. So start your conversations with that and get a micro yes on it. So it's some brain function that, there is a lot of biological thing, the frontal cortex, and I'm not getting into that details. So when you ask a question like that, as I said, 99% of the time, the response would be a yes. So that's the micro yes that you get. And that also reduces the surprise item from that. You want to give surprises in the form of birthday parties and gifts. You don't want to give surprises as feedbacks, right? Oh, you didn't do this well. Don't give that as a surprise. Give parties, birthday parties and gifts and all of that as a surprise, not this. And then second thing is the behavior. So blur is not the answer. Don't pass on generic statements as I just mentioned a while ago. You're careless. Your emails are sloppy. You are not proactive. Don't pass such. So that kind of blurs. So de-blur is the point here. And what it means is focus on the behavior and don't label the person. You are careless means that you are labeling the person as careless. Whereas when you say that, hey, you did not do this, or you waited till the last moment to let me know about that issue in so-and-so case. So when you are talking about that, you are identifying the behavior. You are not labeling the person. And that kind of helps in accepting it. The moment you say that you are careless, the person takes it personally. Obviously, anybody would, right? Nobody wants to be labeled into any such negative taglines. So that's another, that's the second point where we are talking about behaviors. So be the camera. So when you are taking a pic, you are capturing that moment, right? You're not capturing the entire being. So it is similar to that. So be the camera. That's why this camera pic. So be the camera where you're just capturing that particular thing which has not gone well, not labeling that person as into that negative context. The third thing is impact, which means now the whole purpose of giving feedback is to make improvements in the person, to make them grow. Now, how do you make them realize that is the best way? When you're giving feedback, that is the best way to go forward. Make them realize about the impact, which means that what happens if you do whatever is being shared in your feedback, or what happens if you do not do whatever is being shared in the feedback. Okay? So if you make them realize about the impact of the feedback, when it is done and when it is not done, it makes them realize how they are impacting their own performance, how they are impacting the team's performance, how they are impacting the organizational achievement of goals. So that makes them accept it more willingly, and then that makes it easier for them to process it. It makes them easier for them to take action on. And then the last one is listen. Ask questions. How should our process look moving forward? Ask questions on, what do you think about this? How should we make it better? Ask questions and then be ready to listen to what they have to say. A very important characteristic of a manager is to listen, to be able to listen to what the team members have to say and what they think about the whole thing, what they have to say. So always have a listening attitude I mean, this especially applies to managers, that whenever you may not agree with what the other person is saying, but then there are ways to, put forward that, okay, you think this way, but let's work together to, make it happen in the way it works for the organization, in the way it makes sense to the achievement of organizational objectives. So this is basically the model that actually helps in putting forward feedback in the right context, in the right way. And as I said, start with the micro yes, and then use the sandwich. You all have eaten sandwiches, right? So we have a layer 1, layer 2, and we put something in between. That is the masala that actually gives flavor. So try to do that. Start with a positive comment. Probably end with something like, okay, how do we make it better? So that you are involving them into the process. They feel involved. They feel valued as well. And then in between that, you have to kind of lay the layer of the feedback or the message that you want to give, that, hey, this is not working. This needs improvement. This is where you're falling short. So layer that in the middle one so that it's a sandwich thing. So you end it on a positive, you start it with a positive note and you end it on a positive note as well. And in between you have passed on the message as to what needs to change. So this is a meta feedback template. So get buy-in, reduce the mystery and the surprise, focus on the behavior, not the person, focus on data, not interpretation, and no blur words, no generic statements. Impact means, why does this matter? Who is affected by it? And down you can see some of the examples that are there on this. And yes, also agree to an action plan. And at times it is one of the best practices is to actually seek feedback as a manager also. Like, okay, how do you see the feedback that I just gave you, and how do you see me as giving feedback also? Sorry. Okay, so we have already talked about this. So pulling skills means also encourage your employees or your team members to pull feedback. Now, what does pull feedback mean? That you seek feedback from different, people who are surrounding you. So typically you have seen feedbacks happening between the manager and the team member. Pulling feedback means seeking from inputs from your fellow members, your fellow peers, or people from different team members about what they see are because behavioral things can be caught by anybody, right? When it comes to very technical, specific, performance related, it probably is within the team, with your team members, fellow team members, and between your manager and the super manager. But when it comes to something, if you have received feedback on your behavioral aspect, make sure that you are pulling feedback from cross-stream fellow members as well. And then ask them, how am I doing? And also, as I said, keep that curiosity, keep that attitude to change, make changes in yourselves, keep that attitude to learn, and keep that attitude for making yourself a better person, a better professional. And what one thing I could have done 10% better. So expect smaller changes in you on a very regular and a very periodic basis. Don't expect that today I am this and tomorrow I have to become that. Don't have very high expectations, and that is applicable to managers also. So managers should have their expectations from their team members, which is reasonable. Need to work on it together, right? So these are the 3 ways to kick off a feedback culture. Now, feedback culture is something which, when applicable or when applied in an organization, it makes the culture very healthy. It makes the culture very growth-oriented and a growing environment, basically. So normalize the feedback, which means, as I said, do it often. Don't do it once in a year, like, at the end of the year. अरे उस टाइम पे तुमने ऐसे किया था. Nobody remembers साल भर पहले क्या हुआ था, right? So do that often. Have that incorporated in your one-on-ones, in your regular meetings. Write it into the job descriptions. Now, when I say write it into the job descriptions, it means write the expectations into the job descriptions. A person should be aware that, okay, what do I need to achieve? What are the expectations of my role? So that against that only you will be assessed, right? उसी के against आप assessment करोगे कि okay, ये expectations थी, यहाँ पे आपको, this is where you are falling short. So have that into the job descriptions and start the feedback process right at the beginning. So start it from whenever you are onboarding, let them know the expectations from the role, let them know what they are supposed to achieve or deliver on, and then what they would be assessed on. And then it makes it easier for them to know that, okay, this is what I was supposed to do, this is what I did, and then the acceptance of feedback is much, much easier. The second point would be create templates or nudges. So as I said, build feedback into your one-on-one. Have some templates ready. This is what you were supposed to achieve. The goal was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is how you did against goal 1. This is how you did against goal 2. Wherever they are measurable, make it a point that you are putting that very clearly into the template. Ask your direct reports how they like to receive feedback. Every person is different. Nobody would like to hear the statements that we just saw a couple of minutes back. You are careless, your mails are sloppy. Nobody likes to hear those. So avoid those definitely. But also each person would like to hear it in a different setup, right? And avoid as much as possible giving feedback in a general forum. Pointing fingers, hey, you didn't do this well. Not a right way to do. Always appreciate in public and give negative feedbacks. And I hate to call it negative feedbacks, constructive feedbacks in one-on-ones. That's the best way of going. So that, there are the hard part that we saw, taking it personally. So even if they are taking it personally, and if you follow the model that we just saw a couple of minutes back, it makes it easier for the feedback to sink in when the person is listening to it. And have direct reports set nudge reminders also to pull for feedback. Make this into your, maybe once a quarter, they get a nudge. Ask for feedback from your fellow team members. Ask for feedback from managers with whom you interact, not just your direct manager, but managers with whom you interact very often. Ask for feedback from them. And check yourself if you are doing as a manager, that applies to a manager, you can ask your direct reports about how you are providing feedback, how effective is the feedback you are providing and how they are taking it. And invite your manager also to, skip level, what we call it. So your manager talks to your reportee about how you are doing, right? So those are, if you follow these, some of the tips, I would say, this helps in developing a very healthy feedback culture where each one is ready to receive feedback, each one is ready to receive it well, meaningfully, and making efforts to bring that change, to making efforts to bring that improvement in themselves. And together as a team, the deliveries are much, much better. Okay, these are some of the do's and don'ts that I have already talked about during the last few minutes about what should be done and what should not be done. So, as I said, use the term like development areas, constructive feedbacks, areas of improvement. Do not say weakness and poor performance and hopeless. Don't use those kind of words. Use positive, empathetic sentences and do not use extreme words. Always, never. You never do it. तुम तो हमेशा ऐसे ही हो. Very wrong. Then be descriptive. When you are giving examples, give examples of something which can be recalled, which is fresh in the memory, and that is why we say that give it often. When you give feedback which is fresh in the memory of the other person, it helps to recall and also see that yes, this is what I did I remember it, and this is where it went wrong, and this is how I should improve on it. Do not compare peers. वो तो ऐसा करता है, तुम ऐसे करते हो. Very wrong way to handle or give feedbacks. And then do not apologize after delivering negative feedback. It's for the managers that after giving feedback, sorry, इतना मैंने बोल दिया, personally मत लेना. No. The feedback was to be meant for giving so that the other person improves, so the other person gets better at their work. So do not apologize after delivering any negative feedback. That's the key point here. I think with that, I'm done. Let me know if there are any questions.
Do we have any questions in the room?
I am open for feedback. Sure.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
So sometimes whenever we are giving feedbacks at the time of appraisals, there are employees who are getting it in a positive note. However, there are some difficult employees which comes in. And even though the feedback is good for their own betterment, they don't take it very well. And a lot of times we see that at the time of appraisal specifically, why I'm saying, because the goals are already set. There are parameters, there are technical parameters, there are behavioral parameters. Still, if somebody is good in technical terms, they are not good in behavior at times. So how do we tackle that altogether?
So again, on that note, let me understand the question first. So what you are trying to say is, at the time of appraisal, when you are giving feedback, even though their technical feedback is good, sometimes their behavioral feedback is not that great, and then they are not ready to accept it. Yeah. So to that, the answer would be somewhat lying in what we just discussed. Is at the start of the year, when you are laying down the goals. So when you are laying down those goals, make it a point that the behavioral aspects are also covered. And then have regular check-ins. So if you are setting the goals at the start of the year, and then you are making an assessment at the end of the year, and then telling that, hey, this was your goal and this is how you have done, it will not fly. So what you need to do is, when you are setting the goals, have regular checkpoints. So maybe as I said, monthly one-on-ones, have these checkpoints on a regular basis and keep giving them that feedback that, hey, your technical side is good, you're delivering well here, but this is where you need to improve. And give very, specific examples that, okay, you spoke to so-and-so very rudely. That is not what is expected from your role. You could have done it this way. Sometimes there are disagreements, but this is not how you shout, or you should not be yelling at people. So give those feedbacks on a very continuous basis with monthly check-ins. And as I said, it could vary based on what your feedback is all about. So if it is behavioral, the more frequent it is that, hey, you did that last time and you did it again now. This is not acceptable, or you need to make it better. And at the end of the year, again, if there are, and maybe you can have some training sessions, some soft skills, sessions for that person to help them understand what are and as we said, make it a point to put across the impact of what if they do not do what you're asking them to do. So that would help in creating a flow where you are making it very clear to the person that, hey, this is not done. This is what is expected. Here is the help. Here are the trainings that you can undertake to make it better. And at the end of the year, whenever there is an assessment happening. So the assessments also have to be on a very regular basis, specifically for those points where you see some concern. For the points that are, and don't forget to appreciate for the points that they are doing so well. So like that, I think it would make a difference if you are giving that on a very regular basis. I hope I haven't said that. Any more questions?
Is it?
Looking back with what others think that not on working hard, really hard.
Okay, so I can very well. Yeah, so you are asking me about how, what kind of feedbacks I received in my early career and how it has changed me.
But now, and I'm sorry, so I'm only gonna tell the life and
Sure. So, I mean, I may take the whole day explaining this to you, but I'll keep it short. I'll keep it short that, of course, in the initial stage of your career, you get a lot of feedbacks. Feedbacks in the sense that, hey, because there is so much to learn. It's a whole ocean there, and you have to pick up a lot of things on your journey. And after a certain number of years, you then start realizing that, okay, this is how I need to, so to keep your observations, keep your learning attitude open. And the best thing, the first 5 years of your career, and I keep saying that to all the newbies who are just starting their careers, keep the first 5 years only for learning. Do not have any expectations on salaries, on perks, and usko kitna mil raha hai, mujhe kitna mil raha hai. No. The first 5 years, be it any profession, HR or accounts or software development or whatever, different avenues you guys are in, keep the first 5 years into the learning phase where you are trying to absorb as much as possible of what you see around happening, what you see, how people are doing it, what you see as, okay, what are the best. And at times you also learn what should be done. At times you also get to see, ye nahi hona chahiye. I will not do this, right? I mean, I can give an example of my previous organization. There were so many things that were happening there which I could not relate to. And even in that negative situation also, I learned that, okay, this is something that I will not ever do. This is something that I do not agree with and I should not do it. I should not be a part of anything like this ever. So that's how it is. Feedbacks, like, for example, I was given a feedback in my initial stages as to, one was, I remember very categorically, about taking time to decide. Yeah, which means that I used to feel that, something should be done very perfectly and take time. Okay, isko kaisa lagega? Okay, what will be the impact here? Of course, you have to take those decisions. Especially in HR, you would know that you have to take into consideration what would be going well with the employees, whether they will be accepting it, whether it will be taken in the right context and all. So one feedback that I always got in the initial phase of my career was, this thing was, don't take too long to decide. Of course, you have to take, because sometimes when you are taking a decision too late, the impact is gone, right? So take everything into consideration, but don't stretch it too much. So that was one of the feedbacks that I got. And sometimes you have to take risks. Of course, it has to be a calculated risk, but with experience, definitely you learn it. But that was one of the feedback that I can recall. And then, of course, you have to work on it. You have to make yourself conscious that, okay, now that I have to take a decision, what kind of weighing ins I'm doing, what kind of thought process is going on, and then see how I can take the best decisions. Of course, you have to consult all the stakeholders, and then also make sure that it is taken well within the time and it is not taken too late so that people don't appreciate it anymore. So that was there. So as I said, keep the learning attitude, keep looking around, keep your observations and what do you call that? Your eye for looking out for what is happening, how it is happening, and understand the why of it. Once you understand the why, it becomes very easy to accept and process it, and then imbibe it in your own day-to-day working. Hope I answered. As I said, there's a lot to talk about this, but then this is all I could summarize with. Sure.
1 year, a quarterly or a year. But sometimes if we are giving feedback frequently, it also bothers to employees that every time I'm getting a feedback, maybe it's a constructive or a positive, but it may bother. So what is the ideal time or a frequency to give a feedback?
So, feedback need not be always very formal. It can be casual also. It can be, and typically in one-on-one. So, what we recommend as the frequency of one-on-ones is monthly. Monthly one-on-ones between managers and the team members. That is something which is recommended. And one-on-ones, when you're doing it, is just a give and take of how things are happening, how you are doing, how am I doing, whether we are on the right track. So constructive feedback or maybe even positive feedback, it has to be given. I mean, I would suggest you can definitely set the cadence based on what the level of that person is. Somebody at a junior level would definitely get benefited with the one-on-one monthly. But somebody at a much senior level, we can, tweak it to say once in 2 months or once in 3 months. So it will always depend on what level you are at. It will also depend on what is the tracking of that performance. So if the results, suppose for example, a sales cycle is 200 days long, and every week you are tracking kya hua. Not kuch bhi nahi hua. It will take 200 days means it will take 200 days. So have that one-on-one, but then you can definitely talk about other things. Okay, whether it is going on track, whether the efforts are in line with what is expected, and whether there is any course correction needed or not. So there isn't any right or wrong answer to this, but yes, one-on-ones monthly is something which, and again, it can vary based on levels, but one-on-ones monthly is what I feel is an average time that works well.
Okay. Also, giving a technical feedback or a work-related feedback is much easier because we know what is the impact, what is the outcome. Mm-hmm. But giving a behavioral feedback is always a difficult task because somebody is very casual and we are giving, but that person is doing really great. His work is good. He's performing really well, but he's very casual. But giving the behavior feedback and the outcome which we are expecting after giving a feedback is not coming. Like he's not working on it. Mm-hmm. But my work is getting done. So
yeah,
that's the difference.
But then there are instances where we have seen that a very, we call them technical jerks. Technically excellent, right? They are able to deliver anything. But then when it comes to interaction with people, they are jerks. So, if you end up hiring one such person, it is always advisable to, make them realize the impact. So what happens is that person, there is no individual contributor, which can completely work all by himself or herself, right? They need to interact with people. So it shouldn't happen that, okay, when I am working as an individual, I am giving my 110%. But when the moment I interact with someone else, that person, I am talking so rude and I am giving such blunt statements that the other person is demotivated, and you are taking away 10% from their productivity. And if you imagine if that one person is interacting with 5 such people, he or she is reducing it by 50%, 10% from each of them, right? But then if you actually see 110% minus the 50, if you see the person's productivity, that is how you should look at it. So when you say productivity, especially in these cases, it is your individual contribution and your network connections and contributions as well. How you are contributing to the network, how you are contributing to the team effort, right? And that also actually leads to the enterprise contribution. So if you are very good in your individual contribution, but your network contributions are in the negative, your total actual contribution to the enterprise, to the organization is likely to be less. So in these kind of situations, go for the impact. Use that model. Go for a micro yes. Identify the behavior. Give them examples of that. Tell them the impact that it is having on them, on the team, on the organization, on the deliverables, and then ask how can we make it better. So I think that should help.
Thank you.
Hi.
Managers to reason. Even though sometimes managers are ready to reason, employees like not ready to speak or not ready to keep their point. So how to tackle that?
So for that, we talked about building trust, which is when you as a manager are giving feedback to your team members, make it genuine, make it transparent, make it fact-based, and if you do it very regularly, the employees or the team members get that idea that yes, this manager is genuinely interested in my betterment. It will take some time. It will not happen overnight. Like, okay, today I'm your manager, tomorrow you start trusting me. It doesn't happen that way. So you have to build that rapport, get that trust, and that would help in these kind of conversations where the team member would open up to what they feel is right, or would their team member would open up to what are their thoughts, what are their inputs. So that trust thing will take some time, definitely, and that is how you can achieve it. Like, be genuine in your feedbacks, be also consistent, and let it be fact-based, and make them aware that yes, you are genuinely interested in their betterment, in their growth, and connect with them on something different than work as well. So that kind of gives them the idea about, and that forms a connection with between the two, the manager and the team member.
Thank you.
Sure.
What usually happens is when we give a feedback, is it necessary that it should have a negative or a constructive feedback or area of improvement? Because sometimes what happens is the employee is really doing well, performing way far than what is expected, and managers sometimes don't really have the area of improvement because they have exceeded the expectation. So is it necessary that a feedback should always have an area of improvement, or is it okay to just give a positive feedback?
I think, yes, it is situational, I would say. And if you are citing an example where there is nothing that the person needs to improve on, it could be on that note. And in that case, you can end it with the comment that what the team member would like to develop on. So that gives them, again, that, idea that, yes, this person is really interested in making me, I'm doing excellent, I'm doing fantastic. But then when I'm asked this question that, okay, what would you like to see yourself develop into, or how you would like to grow into a better person, or would you like to do something, maybe some course or some certifications on all of that. So that, again, even if you're doing excellent, it gives me a feeling that yes, my manager is thinking about my betterment. I'm doing excellent. All my expectations I'm meeting or probably exceeding in. So not necessarily that there has to be a constructive feedback. You can always ask or have that question for the person to ask their opinion about how they think they can be even a better person.
Yeah. I just had one question.
Sure.
So in one-on-one session, sometimes to make a point, there's a risk of offending the person in front of you. Does it always have to be that way? I'm speaking as an employee.
So you mean offending your manager?
Yeah, in a way. I mean, he might get offended.
No, so again, I would go back to the trust factor. So if you have a good rapport with your manager, if you are, I took a few points for the manager as well. So when I say the manager has to listen, and then in case it is offending, so the way it applies for the managers while they are giving feedback, then it shouldn't be, personal. There shouldn't be any negative words like the words that we just saw. It applies to the team member as well. So don't make personal attacks on your manager. आप कभी मुझे ऐसे करते ही नहीं हो, appreciate करते ही नहीं हो. Don't say that. So you can give specific. So the feedback mechanism that we just talked about, it works both ways. So when you are giving a feedback to your manager, or your manager is seeking a feedback from you as to how they have delivered on your improvements and your growth and your feedback, so make the same principles apply there also. Do not pass generic statements. Give specific examples that, okay, you in that scrum meeting, you suddenly brought me up and put me in a spotlight and I felt awkward. Make them realize that, okay, what they did probably was not something that you would appreciate. So if they know that, okay, this is where I went wrong, I think it shouldn't be very offending. And if it is, then make sure that you are, putting it into the right context. It's always good to make it a little more subtle at times. You have to learn that diplomacy about how to put it and not being offending, sounding offended as well.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right. So do we have any more questions? All right. Thank you, Nandini ma'am. Thank you for coming here and sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking on this forum. Thank you very much.